So let's talk about what is happening in Boulder. Earlier this week, Max Olson of The Athletic released an article that spoke to all 53 scholarship players that entered the transfer portal from Colorado a year ago. All 53 that left entering Deion Sanders' first year, where they are now and what happened with their treatment with the Buffaloes. A lot of them mentioned degrading and demeaning comments from Deion Sanders, who infamously, after his introductory press conference, walked into the Colorado locker room and said, listen, you boys better start packing because I already got my luggage and it's Louis. It's one thing to restore and rebuild a roster that won a single game the year prior to Deion Sanders arriving in Boulder. It's another thing to treat college athletes in a degrading manner. So, for some of the quotes that came out from that story, DRS, mainly featuring a man by the name of Xavier Smith, who went on this past season to be an FCS freshman All-American at Austin Peay, Shadour Sanders, again, Deion's son, the quarterback for the Buffs, took to social media earlier this week to quote tweet one of those quotes and said, I don't even remember this guy. He must have been very mid, meaning average, not all that great. It amplified yesterday morning when Deion Sanders, the 50-plus-year-old head coach of an FBS football program, also got involved in the social media chatter to degrade college athletes. That's where it took a turn. What has your reaction been, DRS, to all of this interaction on social media that we have seen out of the Colorado Stars, Deion and Shadour?
This is, pro football is now college football. We can agree upon this. Now, I'm more of the old school person that says to myself, okay, I don't think the college kids should be paid because basically they're going to the next level the same way any other college kid is. You're not getting paid to go to school. You learn your craft, then you go turn pro in whatever field you're going to here. Now, granted, we knew that wasn't going to last, and now players are getting paid. But also, there's a lot of people out here that are upset with the way Colorado is doing business. But if you like the players getting paid NIL money, this is a new landscape here. It used to be, Ben, how many times did you be able to sit in a living room with a college coach and the parents would ask the questions, can I get a good education? But the one thing is scholarships are renewable year to year to year. But under the old landscape, it was, a no-no if you said, okay, I'm going to bring a kid as a freshman in. At the end of the season, I'm going to tell them, look, your scholarship is no longer available. College coaches, unlike, can make that decision. But the high school coaches, they take notes on, I'm never sending a kid to your school again the way you did him dirty. Sure. This is brand new. But also, the reason why Colorado made a lot of money last year off the field is because they brought in Deion Sanders to film every single thing they did as a reality show. The one thing that we're not used to seeing is behind closed doors. Coaches do this all the time. They'll bring him into the office, hey, look, close that door. I don't think you're right for this program. You're more than welcome to stay, but I'm going to tell you right now, I got 4 players ahead of you next year. The chance of you actually seeing the field are going to be slim to none. So what does that kid usually do? I'm going to end up transferring. Well, Deion puts that on camera here as that job interview and embarrasses some of these individuals. Now, there is a referendum that's going to happen with Colorado and the way these athletics are going to play out. Because if Deion's style does work, Ben, over the next 3 to 4 years, and I don't mean Deion wins back-to-back national championships. They're 500 or better, making bowl games, and maybe now with the expanded playoffs, making it in there. Every college coach is going to see what happens. It goes, I could just kick out anybody I want and just hit that transfer portal, which might even be more important, Ben, than bringing in the freshman out of high school because it's true free agency. Hey, you go to Arizona State. After a year, you're not happy there. I liked you anyway. You come over here. We'll get you a bag and set you up. That's the issue that we're going to have. I don't have any issue with what's happening in Colorado because that is the landscape now. We're no longer talking about an amateur process. These guys are high-paid individuals, and everything is built around social media. You are going to get these conflicts. Is it a great look for Colorado? No, it's not. But if it works, nobody will care. I promise you that. And by the way, next year, Folsom Field, still going to be sold out as well.
We'll see about that. But a couple of things here that I will say. We're not debating the NIL era. This is how Deion Sanders has constructed his roster. Last year, 54 transfers, 53 former scholarship players. This year, 44 players have transferred out, the most in college football. But Deion has also brought in 34. He has never been to an in-home recruiting trip for a high school athlete. not his style. Is it the correct way of constructing a roster? We shall see. What the issue is with this current instance is that Deion Sanders, a football coach, a leader of men, is taking to social media like kids to degrade fellow college athletes. That's not okay by my standards. That should not be what the leader of your organization is doing. How he constructs his roster, that's a very different story. But ultimately, with all of the talk and conversation, what needs to happen is wins. There is no debating. The biggest story in college football, the month of September in 2023, was Colorado. They knock off the reigning national runner-ups in TCU on the road week number 1. They hammer Nebraska week number 2. They win the Rocky Mountain Showdown against Colorado State before they get put in their place in a big way by Oregon. Colorado started off 4-2, middle of October, never won another game. 4-8. This year, DRS, it's a lot of talk for a team that has a win total of 5.5. You just said, if Deion Sanders' style has success, every other college coach is going to follow. That's not correct. And success would be what? 5 wins? A bowl game? Is that true success that sets your team and your program up for success not just one year, but year after year? That is the basis of successful tenures and programs in college football. Again, it's a lot of talk, but Colorado needs to back that up. And what does backing it up look like for the Buffaloes this year? Bare minimum 6 wins, bare minimum bowl eligibility.
Yeah, by the way, they're great for college football because you always need to have a segment of fans that loves that team and an even larger segment that actually hates that team and wants to see them get pasted on a week-to-week basis. That's why the ratings were so high last year. Not necessarily for people tuning in like, hey, this is really fun in Colorado. It was people tuning in hoping they lose. But having that aspect, some of these kids are making way more money than their actual coaches are. That's why we're seeing this new millennium. And when I say like this is going to work, the old school guys aren't going to do it this way. But that next wave of coaches that's going to come up over the next 5 and 10 years, if Colorado works, that's what other institutions that are down in their luck are going to look forward to. We're saying, hey, get me a guy like Deion, shake it up, put it on camera. We'll make a ton of money at the box office, and we'll see how it works. This is the new amateur athletics because they're no longer amateurs. They're professional athletes and will be treated as such. They're no longer college amateurs. They're not.
We're arguing 2 different things. We'll continue the conversation next. Colorado is going to have attention and eyeballs to start off the 2024 college football season, as they did in the opening month of September a year ago. But how long does it last? Because at a certain point, notoriety needs to be met with success. 5.5 is the win total for the Buffaloes. The over has a slight bit of juice. Is 6 wins and bowl eligibility enough? Hey, it would be growth for a team that won just a single game under Carl Durrell back in 2022. In 2023, they won 4, although they lost their final 6 games of the year. And now 6 wins in year 2 in their first year back in the Big 12 would be a step in the right direction. But is it a step in the right direction in the way that Deion Sanders has constructed his Buffalo roster? DRS, the first week of the year, opening Thursday night of the season, there is going to be so many eyeballs on Colorado's opener, which would be the case. But now in a standalone primetime game on Thursday, August 29th, it ratchets up just a little bit more. And Colorado opens the year against an FCS opponent. You hear those words, you would probably say, hey, it's a game the Buffaloes are going to win by at least multiple touchdowns. I'm not so sure. Colorado takes on North Dakota State, the powerhouse of FCS football. 4 championships at the FCS level for the Bison in the last 7 years. And Colorado, despite being at Folsom Field in Boulder, is only about a touchdown and a hook favorite. It's a game Colorado must win. It's a game that will put out so many reactions regardless of the result. If Colorado makes a statement, the Buffs are back. If the Bison win, it's an unshaky start to year number 2 of the Deion Sanders era in Boulder.
Absolutely. And I love that, too, because we are going to watch that football game for all the wrong reasons and a lot of the right reasons, where you're just looking to get down on a wager on that game, but you want to see how good Sanders is in year number 2 here at Colorado. But you're right about that. it's usually you get the layup. You play a Bethune-Cookman. You play a team, a Northwest directional school at this point, not an FCS champion who is not going to be too big for the moment when they step on the field at Folsom Field to take on the Buffaloes. That'll be a fun one to watch, and you're right. We had a referendum last year when Colorado won game one against TCU. Oh, my God, Deion might run the table. Look what he did overnight. This is impressive. And they sort of rode that momentum, and then we started to see, closer games against teams like Colorado State where they probably should have lost to, quite frankly, last year. It's okay, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. And Ben pointed out that collapse at the end of the season. It's up to them to get off to another hot start because you're right about this. Colorado's expected to win game number one against an FCS opponent. If they lose that game, it just feels like open season on Colorado, both Shadour Sanders and Deion Sanders at that point. So when you're talking about entering in your first game, which you want to get 1-0 off on the right foot, there's a lot of animosity heading up to that game, and you're playing a quality opponent here, not a layup.
And Donnie is right. We need villains in sport. Whether justified or not, Colorado has kind of become that role in college football. We saw it represented last year. Dan Lanning with the famous pregame speech, we play for wins, they play for clicks, and they went out and absolutely ran through Colorado 42-6, week number 4 in Eugene. Deion is building his program, whether he wants to or not, to be the team that everybody ramps up to 11 to play, to be the team that week in and week out is not your national championship contender, but is going to get that best shot, is going to get full attention. That will be the case for the Buffs, not just week number 1 against North Dakota State, but each and every week all year long. How does that impact their win total of 5.5, their overall success of trying to reach bowl eligibility? How does it impact the draft stock of one Shadour Sanders, who Deion also took to social media yesterday to remind everybody his son is about to be a top 5 pick in the 2025 NFL draft? And based on the odds makers, Deion Sanders is not wrong. Shadour Sanders, second best price to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft at plus 450. Now $1.50 behind Carson Beck. Donnie, there is no doubt there was a ton of attention paid to this specific market because when we looked at these odds yesterday, getting ready for the show to inform the conversation around all of the social media chatter that had been caused by Shadour Sanders and Deion Sanders, there was a 3-way tie for the best price to be that number 1 overall selection next year. Carson Beck, Georgia's quarterback. Quinn Ewers, Texas's quarterback. Shadour Sanders, Colorado's QB, all at 5-1. A ton of movement in this market. Not quite kind to Quinn Ewers, and Shadour Sanders now the second best price.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch this play out because we did hear the rumblings of Deion Sanders going make no mistake about it, he's going to be a high pick, but we're going to pick exactly where he goes, which doesn't set a great precedent here because it's usually a job interview. You put your best foot forward and the team higher up takes you because they like you as a quarterback and you can be the face of the franchise. So one thing we do know, Shadour Sanders is a talent. If you just put on the film of him throwing footballs, it's as pretty as it gets, technologically sound, everything looks good, but then you have to say to yourself, because it always comes down to this, if you have player A and player B, they are absolutely identical. Do you want what might come with the off-season and shoot stuff, which means like Deion Sanders on Twitter on a Monday morning after his kid played a professional game, questioning the head coach and what they're actually doing? That's going to be part of that equation here. But the one thing we can't deny, Shadour is a really good quarterback, and rightfully so. If he has a good season, he'll be a top 5 because why? Good quarterbacks always go in the top 5. We just saw 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12. He's going to be a high draft pick, but it's also about mentioning how much that wild ride is going to be when we're taking a look at Caleb Williams, who's a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and picking him apart as one of the best quarterbacks we've seen over the past 20 years. I can imagine now what we're going to do to Shadour after the season is over.
We heard from NFL draft scouts through Ian Rappaport on day 3 of the NFL draft that Spencer Rattler's performance in a Netflix documentary series when he was a senior in high school was the lasting image of why he did not go day number 2. Now, the key for Colorado, strictly in a football sense, and at a point, the talk will not be about what is happening off the field, but on the field, is keeping Shadour Sanders upright. Sacked 49 times last year. The Buffs overall allowed the second most sacks in college football at the FBS level a season ago, 56 in total. But if you have a top 5 pick, you need to see the wins back it up. The Buffs just a 5.5 win total.